I love studying the art and design of movies. The artist's interpretations and decisions in designing the world the story inhabits. And George Lucas's cinematic saga is a masterclass in narrative design. From character and creature design, costumes, props, technology, architecture, environments, even storyboarding and poster art. Good design visually communicates style, mood, and context to the audience, enriching the experience of the story being told on screen. Good direction challenges the artist in much the same way that good storytelling challenges the director. And George would frequently collaborate with the art department to illustrate not just what he had already written, but would even allow them to inspire and influence what he had yet to write. The art department would play a vital role throughout practically every stage of production, to where it's nearly impossible to separate Star Wars from its artistic design. Artists like Ralph McQuarrie, Joe Johnston, Ian McCaig, and Doug Chiang, along with the many talented and imaginative creatives at Lucasfilm, continue to inspire artists to this day. It was assumed that for the longest time, the saga would consist of 9 films, but by the time Episode 3 was being rolled out, it seemed George Lucas had had enough.
Positively, you're really closing the door without any wiggle room whatsoever.
There is no Episode 7.
The franchise would continue to stay relevant through merchandise, re-releases, and video games, while other writers and artists would further explore the Star Wars canon through television series and the extensive lore of the expanded universe.
George never tried to retrace his steps. He was always pushing it out in different areas where Star Wars hadn't been yet.
With upcoming projects in development and the Clone Wars gaining popularity, things were looking bright for the franchise that no one could have predicted what was about to happen next.
Today, I am proud to announce the Walt Disney Company is acquiring Lucasfilm.
Though initially met with high praise and fanfare, recent additions have steadily brought the franchise to a state of apathy, suggesting a growing fatigue with general audiences, while story and creative decisions have radically divided its own fans.
The studios and everything said, well, wow, we can make a lot of money. This is a license to kill. And they did it. That's the downside of Star Wars. And it really shows an enormous lack of imagination.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
And fear of creativity, because they're basically corporate types. They think, the worst thing that happens when they think they know how to do it, then they start making decisions that ensure that it's not going to work.
"20 years ago marked the end of an era, and for the past 10 years, the diverse interpretations of artists have caused many to question what even is Star Wars. As artists, what lessons can we learn from this franchise over the years? And how do we humbly recognize and respond when art fails?" To be honest, this problem isn't exclusive to Star Wars. For almost a decade now, it seems that many artists and studios have been struggling with new ideas and new ways to grow. And art and entertainment has gradually lost its appeal. Movies, music, even video games are running into the same problem. Regurgitation and expediency seem to be the way to go nowadays to maintain relevance.
Nintendo has mastered something I can only describe as weaponized nostalgia. They've turned our childhood memories into a soulless business model, and the part that really hurts is that it works.
An incredible amount of time and money is spent reimagining and updating already established ideas, Ironically, this practice has resulted in many creative and resourceful people to become creatively bankrupt, cashing in on people's nostalgia while incorporating modern aesthetics and sensibilities.
I think it's hard when creative decisions are made by committee, and it's hard when creative decisions are made by people who don't even really watch movies or like know anything about them. And that tends to be what's occurring a lot. And I think also when something does well, studios want to keep that going, so they remake the same things, but humans don't want that. They want fresh, they want to feel new things, experience new things, see new things. So, I don't know, I guess it's all just a bit of a mess right now, isn't it?
Even though many studios are contributors to this problem, one name in particular seems to represent the extremes of this dangerous and regressive practice that has led to aggressive mishandlings of intellectual properties and a waning faith with their core audience.
Just a little side note / confession, but as a former Disney adult who has learned the error of her ways, I feel pretty qualified to say this. Nintendo really is the Disney of gaming. They're wholesome on the surface, very full of magic and memories, but underneath, there's a very quiet, corporate, malicious control. And both companies know how to tug at your childhood heartstrings while handing out copyright strikes and ulterior motives on the side.
I heard the most chilling thing, and it was one of my friends who's quite senior at Disney, told me a thing, and he said, Disney's plan, this was about 5 years ago, just before COVID, he said Disney's plan was to release 10 movies a year, but they wanted to make sure every one of them did $1 billion.
What?
And they said they wanted to just shrink it down to just $1 billion movies. And it seemed very credible at the time. Their idea was to do 3 Marvel movies, 2 Star Wars movies, 2 Pixar's, 2 live action animation. And I can't remember the whole bunch. They had a formula. And the idea was that cinema was going to become this horrific cookie cutter $1 billion movie industry. And they sold tons of products based on that. And it was like the death of art. I mean, it was worse than AI. You know, that's like AI in human form, you know?
And unfortunately, it's not just the major studios, but even what the artist brings to the public square and social media becomes just another thing that's easily consumed and disposable.
Did you guys see the Matrix NFT thing that they did for Resurrections just a couple days ago? They made NFTs for the new movie, and there were like 100,000 of them, and the site broke like in the first few hours because there were over 300,000 people in the queue trying to buy these NFTs for $50. And so like when you think about the concept of digital scarcity and things that are, you know, they can't be copied,
That are easily reproduced.
well, but they're not the same.
The human element in the creative space is just another cog in the corporate machine, and the individual's authentic expression is lost in the fluctuating and endless sea of faces. Even modern art in general has succumbed to similar practices. If not in subject matter or substance, then in style and technique. Imitating or plagiarizing others' creative expression rather than doing something honest. In moderation, I feel, this can be a welcome change of pace from the norm, and can show an artist's appreciation and acknowledgement of their influences. In moderation. However, it feels like there's an overabundance of this practice that stunts the artist's growth and fails to truly inspire and challenge others or ourselves to pursue that which is meaningful in art.
If I open a portfolio, if I'm hiring somebody, yes, I want to make sure you can speak the language. So I look to see if you're competent enough in your drawing and your painting and your sense of tone and light. That's just basics. That's like kindergarten stuff. Then I want to see, okay, so the only thing you have to offer me that I can't buy anywhere else is you. All right, who you are, how you feel, what you love and what you don't love, what you've experienced. All that is unique. It's as special as me or Frank Frazetta or Brahm or anybody, right? Carlo Ortiz, you have it all right there. But you have to be brave enough to tell me what it is. And you have to speak the language well enough to communicate it clearly enough that I don't get confused.
I know I'm guilty of this when I look at my own work over the years, and I'd like to explore some of the ideas, principles, and habits that we allow to direct our approach to art and influence our creative decisions. Like I said in the beginning, I love studying art and design. And when I say study, I don't mean just scrolling online or flipping through pages and gawking over the artwork. Though admittedly, that's often how it starts. Browsing the artist's work and being influenced and inspired. But when I study, I'm no longer considering the draftsmanship, composition, or style, but instead, I try to understand what decisions were made by the artist to produce their designs. In illustration, an exercise I like to do is separate the art from the narrative and analyze the design on its own terms. What's the first impression I get when I see this? What does its size and shape suggest about how it occupies its space? What mood is set by the colors and textures of a character or environment? Is it natural and organic to its setting? Or is it artificial and makeshift in its properties that perhaps are working in contradiction to others?
The foundation of what you need as a concept artist is to make beautiful images. That's sort of, in a lot of ways, a starting place to become a good concept artist, so that, you know, whatever image you do make that actually serves the story and solves the problem is still a good-looking image. But more importantly, even if you throw all of the pretty art aside, solving the problem is number one.
Artistically speaking, why does this exist? And does it achieve the desired outcome? What principles are applied to the artist's practice that determine their understanding and perspective? What outside forces inspire and ultimately guide the artist's process?
I didn't go to art school, I'm self-taught, but I started to really find as many magazines as possible, and I honed my craft as best as I could. And I thought I was pretty competent, but then I started working with George. And that's when I realized I know nothing about design and art. I knew about industrial design, I could do product designs, I could do cool spaceships, but that's not what narrative art is. Narrative art is driven by story. Story comes first, the art comes second. And it's one of those things that I learned from George, where cinematic narrative design is very specific. It's story driven.
The principles that matter to the art determine the value of the artist. Conversely, the principles that matter to the artist determine the value of the art. What I love particularly about film and even video game art and design are the numerous illustrations that represent a series of artistic decisions. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of things are considered in design. And great designers will tell you stories of hundreds, perhaps thousands of designs that never saw the light of day. And these books provide a glimpse into that process of elimination that all art and artists go through. You see, it's easy for artists to create just about anything. It's very difficult, however, to truly create one thing. There's another exercise I like to do. One that's very exclusive to this brand. I take the art of books of all the Star Wars trilogies and lay them out, comparing, contrasting, and appreciating. What's unique with this exercise in particular is seeing how 3 generations of artists approach the same universe and flesh out different cultures, characters, and history.
One of the biggest challenges with doing a Star Wars film is that everything in the movie has to be designed. Everything from the forks and the tables to the costumes, to the dwellings they live in, to the culture itself. What kind of a culture it is, what kind of artifacts do they have? And it's a very big job because every little minute detail has to be thought through.
What trends and cultures influence their artistic style? And what restrictions and innovations like budget and technology determine the level of creativity? Thinking about things beyond the control of the artist, the outside forces that play a part in how and why they create the look of Star Wars.
Star Wars aesthetic is really elusive. I mean, the simple answer is that it's George, and it's Ralph McQuarrie, and it's Joel Johnston, but that's only part of it. Star Wars aesthetic is also grounded very much in the 70s and 80s, and it's also in the era in terms of where George was when he was making those movies, in terms of the materials and the designs that he was influenced by. And so it's all of those things.
Japanese films, the car culture of Southern California in the 1960s, basically even old B-movie films like Flash Gordon, much earlier times, all those things, Metropolis, everything has an influence on Star Wars.
Well, when I work with new designers for Star Wars, it's interesting because their first instinct is to draw like cool spaceships and monsters and stuff like that, and that's not what we want. No, if you actually look at Star Wars as a historical film, as a period piece, that's where it is, and that's where you have to ground everything in reality, and you have to do a lot of research. You have to be almost like an archaeologist, and you go back into the textbooks, find things in human culture that are really exotic, that are interesting, and then you update it. So it's really more about sort of history delving and updating things and twisting it a little bit. And granted, yes, we are designing spaceships, we are designing creatures, but that's a piece of it.
Just have Ralph McQuarrie paintings up on your monitor, or print them out, put them up all over your room, your office, have them on your desk, have those things out as reference. I mean, that's the Bible.
Before his paintings were published, I don't think many people really understood that there was such a thing as a concept artist.
Ralph McQuarrie, formerly a conceptual design artist for Boeing, was chiefly responsible for the initial illustrations and concepts that were integral in convincing the studio to greenlight the project.
I was the first artist and was pretty much working alone for most of the things I did for Star Wars.
I'd seen some of his paintings and I thought he was really brilliant. I had said, look, I want you to do some paintings of these scenes that I've done so that the studio can get a picture of what it is I'm talking about. When I turned in the script, I had about 5 or 6 drawings that I turned in with it also to say this is what it's going to look like.
He had a concept for a big, spectacular visual, and it didn't come across in the script. So I tried to give it scale, juxtaposing the tiny little figures with the great, spectacular backgrounds. George would say, don't worry about how we're going to do it. We just want to see an impression of what this scene would look like on the screen.
And when George saw what he wanted, he was saying, he would always say, okay, look at Ralph's art, that's what I want.
More often than not, when people think of the look of Star Wars, McQuarrie's designs in particular laid the foundation for how we perceive that galaxy far, far away. One of the things I've noticed about Star Wars in hindsight is how the beginning of each trilogy sets the stage not just in design, style, and narrative, but rather how we consider the franchise moving forward. From an artistic standpoint, Star Wars had brought a unique and fresh perspective to the science fiction genre. Rather than a utopian, neat, and sleek look from the 50s and 60s, which gradually became darker and more erotic into the 70s, Star Wars presented something more weathered, used, and practical.
The really simple cliche is that, Star Wars is very iconic. Simple shapes, simple idea.
If you look at a Star Wars film, if you look at a shot, it's very simple. Iconic shapes, triangles, spheres, rectangles. You could block something out with 3 shapes.
The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi continued to expand on the Star Wars aesthetic, a style which had mass appeal and influenced many artistic designs outside of the franchise. In movies and television shows, even reality started reflecting this aesthetic to some capacity, with military aircraft and in the automobile industry. After the conclusion of the first trilogy, fans kept themselves occupied with toys, comics, video games, novels, and fan films, waiting for George to reinvigorate the franchise and show them something they've never seen before. Again.
Boy, I'll bet they'll be happy.
Yep, that's what it's all about.
This is the 1st of November, 1994. Today is my first day of writing the new Star Wars series. Took my kids to school this morning. My oldest daughter was sick all night. I got no sleep whatsoever. I have beautiful, pristine yellow tablets ready to go. Nice fresh blocks and pencils. I'm all set. All I need is an idea.
In 1994, Lucas had begun writing the first episode in the new prequel trilogy. And early the following year, he had assembled a small team of artists to begin the early stages of pre-production.
I brought in Doug and a few of the other designers. And then there's a little group, and then we started building that little group that's the design group from the attic. And we worked for 2.5 years together. And what I've done is, over those 2.5 years, spent huge amounts of time approving, changing, and finalizing designs for things. Thousands of things.
After working as a creative director for ILM on films like Terminator 2 and Forrest Gump, Doug Chiang worked as the lead design director for The Phantom Menace. And over the course of 4 years, the Lucasfilm art department continually visualized and polished the look of Episode 1. An unprecedented amount of time to have an art department working on a single film.
I started with a staff of 2, and we were given a huge list of vehicles, creatures, environments, and whatnot to design. And it was just a matter of sitting down and trying to comprehend, where to start first, and then how to design something that will live up to the expectations of everybody that's going to see this film.
One relatively easy exercise artists use to challenge themselves creatively is to examine a part of their process from a different perspective, forcing the artist to get out of their own head and observe something in a different way. Sometimes this change in perspective allows artists to reconsider the thing entirely and emphasize an aspect of something that's perhaps taken for granted. With some imagination and insight, you can take something so familiar and recognizable and consider it in a new context. The original trilogy designs had a very unique look and style that fans had come to expect from the world of Star Wars. But in 1999, fans were shown a glimpse into just how rich and diverse the galaxy was before the Empire.
I was very clever in the first Star Wars films in that I kept the design very simple, and I avoided situations where I was going to get into trouble design-wise. This one, I'm daring to take the chance and see what happens.
With new characters and creatures, locations, cultures, and technology, George Lucas wasn't interested in treading old ground, but presents something that feels new and still feels uniquely Star Wars. This change in context and perspective allowed the subsequent films to further expand the boundaries of what the franchise could be, introducing bold new designs and ideas that gradually became more rigid, restrictive, and industrial as the story progressed to the timeline of the original trilogy.
I distinctly remember one of the first weeks working with George at Skywalker Ranch was really terrifying because I thought I would be drawing classic, original trilogy designs like Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston. And that's when he said, no, forget everything, we're not going to do that. We're going to actually go back in time and we're going to establish the design foundation for Star Wars. And what he meant by that was he wanted to really create sort of this foundation that anchors all Star Wars designs, because he saw the original trilogy as, designs taking place in our timeline, like 1970s, 1980s. Yeah. He said, okay, for the prequels, we're actually going to go back to the 1920s, 1930s, when, industrial design, automotive design was more romantic. It was more handcrafted. Everything was more elegant because everything was treated more like art. And then slowly, as you progress through the Star Wars timeline, those forms become more industrialized and become more assembly line. And so that was the logic.
From a design standpoint, our understanding and outlook of Star Wars had changed drastically almost overnight. And this bold new approach gave artists the freedom, even permission, to explore more creative and stylized ideas. Advancements in technology and computer graphics allowed artists to design things that would be either too expensive or impossible to create realistically. Movie characters and environments in general became more bold and ambitious, more detailed, and almost alive.
They stole it from us. Sneaky little witches.
And I was thinking about this, what to talk about at TED. When I talked to the kind rep from TED, and I said, listen, what should I talk about? He said, don't worry about it, just be profound.
Good design is simple and to the point, neither rendered or flourished. And often when presenting something new, the artist's design can't be too unfamiliar or unusual that you leave the audience in confusion.
Why do I do so much stuff that involves mystery? And I started trying to figure it out. And I started thinking about, well, why do I do any of what I do? And I started thinking about my grandfather. I loved my grandfather. Harry Kelvin was his name, my mother's father. He died in 1986. As a kid, I saw him come over to me with radios and telephones and all sorts of things, and he'd open them up. He'd unscrew them and reveal the inner workings, which many of us, I'm sure, take for granted, but it's an amazing gift to give a kid, to open up this thing and show how it works and why it works and what it is.
And even if the audience doesn't initially understand what's being presented, there's enough information through form and function that the audience can, instinctively and emotionally, get a sense of what they're seeing and come to their own conclusions.
When I was a kid, I was always like taking apart boxes and stuff, and last night in the hotel, I took apart the Kleenex box. I was just looking at it, and I'm telling you, it's a beautiful thing, I swear to God. I mean, when you look at the box and you sort of see how it works.
Now, admittedly, not all art has to follow this principle. Sometimes art is intentionally designed to leave the viewer uncertain and create a feeling of mystery or intrigue.
The thing is, we'd go to this magic store in New York City called Lou Tannen's Magic. It was this great magic store. It was a crappy little building in Midtown, but you'd be in the elevator would open, there'd be this little small magic store, you'd be in the magic store, and it was a magical place.
Some artists prefer this practice and create art that intentionally explains nothing and provides no frame of reference or objective, allowing the viewer to have a subjective experience of the art itself. Art for art's sake, if you will.
So one of the things that I bought at the magic store was this, Tannen's Mystery Magic Box. The premise behind the Mystery Magic Box was the following: $15 buys you $50 worth of magic. Now, I bought this decades ago, and I'm not kidding. If you look at this, you'll see it's never been opened. But I've had this forever.
And though this can spark the imagination of the viewer and provide a sense of awe and spectacle, in the long term, however, this practice inevitably leads to art that is lacking in anything substantial or meaningful.
Now, I was looking at this, it was in my office, and as it always is on the shelf, and I was thinking, why have I not opened this? And why have I kept it? So I thought, maybe there's something with this. I started thinking about it, and there was this giant question mark. I love the design, for what it's worth, of this thing. And I started thinking, why haven't I opened it? And I realized that I haven't opened it because it represents something important to me.
And though some may argue that that is, in fact, the point of the art, that the lack of a point or purpose, form or function, is substantial and meaningful by design, and that the art can be anything you want it to be.
It represents my grandfather. It represents infinite possibility. It represents hope. It represents potential.
The only problem I have with that argument in the long term is that, consequently, if the art can be anything, it can also be nothing.
And what I love about this box, and what I realized I sort of do in whatever it is that I do, is I find myself drawn to infinite possibility and that sense of potential. And I realized that mystery is the catalyst for imagination. Now, it's not the most groundbreaking idea, but when I started to think that maybe there are times when mystery is more important than knowledge.
Now, this approach to art is nothing new. I can express something wholly original and even inspiring. But much of modern art today emphasizes this practice to the point that art is no longer about an explicitly solid object, but rather an abstract and deconstructed concept. What does a thing mean to the artist or the viewer, rather than what does it mean on its own terms? It's a very introspective practice that I see frequently applied to much of art today, and practiced by many artists.
Is Zack Snyder an auteur? I think I'm going to leave that up to the audience to decide.
So how does this very modern, introspective behavior manifest in something so understood and beloved that it inevitably becomes something wholly different and even works in opposition to the object's original intent?